And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that you're meeting on, the Whadjuk Perth region people, and respect the contribution they make to the life of the city and this region. Good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Melanie Bradley of Land Plan Associates, and I am the convener for the Urban Design Forum WA. I would like to thank Future Bayswater and Howdy Coffee for helping to organize this forum. I also must advise you that this event is being live streamed and will be shown nationally, which is really fantastic. And I can't wait to see what the result is. Some housekeeping before we start. The emergency exit is that way. And the toilets are at the back. You can reach them through that door right there or around. I'd also like to take a moment to tell you about the Urban Design Forum WA and what we're all about. Reinvigorated in 2012, the Urban Design Forum WA is dedicated to the promotion and improvement of urban design outcomes in WA and beyond. We seek to reinforce the engagement of design professionals and the community to ensure the strongest awareness and support for best practice urban design outcomes. Our events feature speakers who are experts in a range of planning matters as well as achieving design outcomes through their various professions. We also have published 3 books which feature speakers from past events. The latest publication contains a retrospective of our past 2 to 3 years of events focused on density, diversity, and design. It is called Drawing the Line, and it is available tonight for $10 from Hans Orleman. And there he is in the red t-shirt there. Had to spruik that. Our efforts to promote good urban design outcomes are aided by support from the Planning Institute of Australia, WA. PIA WA is actively engaging the state government and planning professionals to advocate for good design outcomes. The PIA State Conference will be held 31st of August at Perth University and is entitled New Horizons. The forum tonight is in the form of a panel discussion, so if we could please hold any questions until after the discussion finishes. There may be some time for some question and answer session, a short one. Now I would like to introduce you to our speakers. We've got Paul Shanahan, PIA National Planning Champion, 2018. Paul co-founded Future Bayswater with the aim of challenging the negative perceptions around density and creating an alternative and positive conversation about the town centre's revitalization. We've got Anna Kelderman from Shape Urban. Anna believes that community empowerment is fundamental to the planning process. She will be moderating the panel tonight. And we have Kareena May of Site Planning and Design. Kareena is a founding member of #Future South Perth and promotes conversations about the future of the built, natural, and social spaces with a silent majority of ratepayers that are informed and constructive. And with that, I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Melanie. Thank you, everyone. I'm a planner, but I somehow find myself doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, and over the years, I've been involved in a lot of community discussions. But then in more recent years, I also got quite heavily involved in the Urban Design Forum at WA. And we spent a lot of time talking to architects, and we spent a lot of time talking to urban designers, and we spent a lot of time talking to technicians of various disciplines. And what we don't spend a lot of time talking about is the engagement with the people that we're actually dealing with. So we've got 3 fantastic books, and I do not question to say that they are fantastic books, but not one of them has an article in it written by a community member. And these are the people that we're designing for. So the Urban Design Forum of WA is talking about design, it's talking about good design and elevating the discussion, but we haven't necessarily had that conversation with the community members that we're doing the design for. I guess I started seeing in probably the last 5 years some really interesting and emerging behaviours in the communities that I was dealing with. Not just small groups, but larger groups, groups that deal with the concerns about the change in our society, groups that deal with trying to activate our spaces. They're all over the place, and as an engagement practitioner I deal with them a lot. It's exciting, it's fun, but I think it's worth having this conversation and trying to get to the guts of why organisations sprout and where they find themselves heading, and perhaps ask some tough questions about how that's going. So I'm going to launch into it. My first question was a bit bland, and I think there's a lot of people in the room that probably know a little bit about this, so I'm going to merge them. It's a little bit about how did Future Bayswater come about, from a guy who's managed to make it to planning champion of the country. And I want to point out that all of the previous planning champions are people that have got a media presence, or they're quite well-known people, or they're engineers, or they're something that's really well-known. Some of them are scientists, but not like local science teacher scientists. So that is interesting. And it is interesting that now is the time that the Planning Institute decided to award a community group and a community member as a planning champion. So how did Future Bayswater come about, and what made you specifically lead a charge? What was the moment that said, I'm a science teacher plus I'm something else?
I'm really confused about this award as well. And yeah, it was a real shock. And can I just say from the start, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's an award for the whole group, and there's a large group of us, and we've been working for 2.5 years. So I just want to acknowledge my Future Bayswater mates, because I would not have won that award without them. I guess, you know, when we started, it was interesting because I've just run for council, and some of you know that, and many of you didn't vote for me. Really want to thank you for that. And I guess I've been trained prior to that, and to sort of be ignorant of local issues. I kind of just assumed that, you know, Bayswater was going to get what a lot of other precincts were getting. I just assumed that. And when I ran for council, I realised that, in fact, that's not the case. And in fact, what I was seeing was one conversation. There was one conversation taking place, and all power to the people who were taking it, but it wasn't really a conversation I agreed with. For me, I guess I felt like I wasn't being listened to, so it was born out of anger and frustration a little bit. Not so much anger, but frustration. I wanted to start another conversation, but I didn't know how to do it. And I think the big tipping point for me was when I met some other people in this community who wanted to do that as well. That's the big thing. And I want to acknowledge Andrew Watt. You know, the Sex Pistols started had a famous gig, and out of that gig, 1 million bands were born. And I went to an electors meeting, and there were a lot of people there, late 2015, and I saw Andrew in action, and I thought, I've got to meet this guy, because he is saying all the things that I want to sort of work on myself. And I did meet him, and we just got a bunch of people together, and we decided that we were going to try and start an alternative conversation. As bland as that sounds, we were just going to say what we wanted, what our vision was for this town centre. So I suppose it was an itch that I couldn't scratch, and it got itchier and itchier, and I found some people to help me scratch it. And very quickly realised, I mean, we started really talking about one building, and that's the building that's going to be built here later this year, so enjoy this place while you can. It's a great place. When I heard that about the oak development, I was really thrilled. I was surprised, this is how naive I was surprised to hear that there were people who weren't as thrilled as me, and that's fair enough. But I decided that, you know, people like myself needed to get up and actually say how excited we were, because we could see the benefits that would bring about. Then we realised that pretty much anywhere where there's a transport hub in Perth, this same battle could happen. And I guess our horizons have been pushed out. And now we're not just talking about Bayswater, we're talking about other places in Perth. So I guess you've got to have an issue. You've got to have people who are like-minded. It's easy to do it when you're in a group. And look, it's personal for me too. I mean, I've been a teacher in this area for nearly 3 decades, and I have a very keen interest in the future of young people in this area. Like Keith, I had kids late, and I've got young children, and I'm really, really concerned about their future in this area. I'd love them, if they want to be able to afford to live here, to work here. I'd love them to be able to work here, so I don't have to drive them to work. But at the moment, I think those choices around this area are quite limited. So there's the personal as well.
Thank you. I guess some of that is mirroring what government's trying to achieve is to keep people local, and this sort of new workplace thing that the state's been ravaging on about for a while. How do you think this discussion, the future Bayswater discussion, and you're involved in it, is contributing to that debate, to that discussion?
So, state directions like Metronet, Perth Peel directions, we're big fans of those, because we see that if those visions came to fruition, we would get what we want here. I mean, future Bayswater wants Bayswater train station to be the first Metronet hub. We want it to be number one, and we want all of the urban regeneration that goes with that. So we are informed by that. We try to be evidence-based. We try to follow state direction because we believe this is the way to go. We want to stop urban sprawl. We want density here so that we don't have to go into our suburbs. We want all of the benefits that brings. I mean, people in this area, vibrancy, economic vibrancy, safety, passive surveillance, a place where people can spend and play locally, that's really important to us. Also getting people out of their cars, getting more grown out of our infrastructure. We see that there's so many benefits to a lot of what is being spoken about in the state direction. So for us, a big part of our job has become, and I didn't know this was going to happen 2.5 years ago, but it's become about being an advocate for that and getting in front of whoever we can to try and actually advocate for those state directions, particularly density around the train station. Now, I'd say when we talk to our state politicians and when we talk to federal politicians, we generally get a good hearing. I'd say with our local government, unfortunately, we've been spectacularly unsuccessful, but that doesn't mean that we give up. I think the ideas that are enshrined in those directions are critical to Perth's future. If we're heading to over 4 million new people total, we've got to think about where we're going to put them in a way that brings prosperity and actually brings us advantages. Really important to us. So we see a part of our job as advocating for those and being advocates for that and being defenders of Metronet in this area. That's how we think of ourselves. So it's a big part of what we do.
I'm going to come to you really soon. But you just said something that was kind of interesting, and it comes at me, I guess, from a consulting point of view. What do you want the local government to do? And not just this local government. And I'll ask the same of you. What do you want the local government? What do you think the local government can do better to have that conversation with everyone and every side?
We'll just do what we say. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. Look, I think being a local government, I've sort of learned that's an incredibly tough job. And it's interesting, we got to talk with the Labor candidate for Perth recently, and he put it really well. State and federal politicians have this separation from their community because federal politicians are in Canberra a lot, and state politicians have a lot of a bigger area to cover, and I get that. So I really don't want to bag local government. But I do think that certainly recently there have been decisions that have been made that don't follow state direction. And I guess I don't understand why they would do that. So I would like them to give more due regard to that, because if they don't, I mean, obviously there's a danger that possibly they're going to have some of these planning powers taken off them. And I don't think that's a great idea. I think you want local input. It's going to always be a lot better. So there's that side of it. I would like to see them engage with the community continually. I'd like them to talk a little bit more about what the benefits of a vision like Future Bayswater has. This idea of putting our extra population around transport hubs. So many benefits to that. I would like to see them do that. In a way, what we've been trying to do is clear the ground, clear the air a bit for them, and make it easier for them to have that sort of conversation. But it is a fraught area, there's no doubt about it. I mean, we're talking about the places where people live. We're talking about change that is coming and how it's going to I totally get that. And I understand that not everybody's going to have our point of view, and that's fine. But I think local government, you need to have a lot of courage, and you need to be able to get up there and say, look, we're not talking about the metre squared around you. We're not talking about what happens in your lifetime. What we're actually talking about, and what future Bayswater is talking about, is what this place is going to be like in 50 years' time. And I'd like to see local governments talking more about that. Yes, you've got to talk about the now, no doubt about that. But we need to think about leaving the joint better off. You know, and I'd hate to think that our generation, my generation, doesn't do that. So I think it's a conversation around that. What's the future going to be like? How are we going to leave this place off so it's better for everyone else? And that sounds a little sentimental, I know, but there's some really hard practical decisions we can make so that happens. Yeah, more future focused, I think.
I mean, I can see some big challenges between local government being the leader in that conversation and state government sort of being a bit hands-off. That worries me a bit. As an engagement practitioner on behalf of all local governments everywhere, that state government creates policy and then hopes to God that someone at local government is going to stand in front of a crowd of people and put it forward. So I think there's some inherent risks in the state making the policy and stepping back. There's some policy sort of on its way out pretty soon, precinct planning design guidelines that's going to come and the Design WA documents. But for me, my distinct feeling is that those policy documents aren't going to go terribly far if we haven't talked to the community, because they're still there. They haven't gone away because we created a policy. What do you think planners should do as a planner?
Wow, that's a good question, Anna. Just a bit of background, I am a professional planner and I run a planning consultancy here in Perth. But I really feel like my role in Future South Perth is not so much as a planner. You know, I really want to put my resident and ratepayer hat on as much as I put my professional planning hat on. And the two other co-founding members of Future South Perth aren't professional town planners. They're people that live and work locally and have a really big interest in the future of the neighbourhoods and the suburbs in the city of South Perth. And much like Future Bayswater, we came together because we found common ground at the South Perth Station Precinct Public Design Forum, which was a community engagement process that was looking at how the precinct around the future South Perth station might develop and what were our aspirational targets for that, the built and natural and social environment. So, I mean, as a planner, I think I like to think that I can bring a lot of value into the role as a member of Future South Perth, and we probably exist a bit differently to Future Bayswater, and it's probably because we really only started with our Facebook page in December 2017. But you know, for us it really was about, there was one particular group within our community that was driving the agenda and driving the conversation, and that was translating into some really clear outcomes by council, because they were only hearing one part of the story and one voice from the community. So we just really wanted to start a conversation, and the easiest way for us to do that, given that we're all time poor, was to have a social media presence. So we use our social media presence to try and engage with the community and get a better sense of what the whole community wants, and to put that position forward to council and give council confidence and the courage that Paul talked about, give them the courage to make decisions that were based on a balanced perspective from the community, as opposed to just constantly hearing from one group in the community. And for me, it probably really started, aside from the public design forum that the City of South Perth ran it, I think the real turning point for me was we had Embargo Bar on the South Perth foreshore for a summer, or for 6 weeks over summer one year, and it was fantastic, and it was so amazing to see people going down with their families and their kids and their dogs, and there was old people and there was young people, and you know, across all different times of the day. And Embargo Bar was meant to come back last summer, and it didn't. and it was, from what we understand, it was in response to concern that was raised by community members and local businesses. Yet everyone that I was talking to was really upset and really sad, but no one was conveying that message to council. You know, we find our role at the moment, until we grow a bigger core group of members, is really just to have that conversation with the community and get a better understanding of what they want and put that position forward to council. I don't really feel like my role as a planner plays into it a lot, other than, you know, trying to use the benefit of my experience and my professional knowledge to help inform the discussion and provide an alternative view through social media that might help shape someone else's opinions. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, Anna, but good luck.
We'll take it. I guess one of the things that I'm grappling with in the work that I do is this sort of growing divide between the sides. How do you bridge that, get a really good cohesive community outcomes, and still comfortably sit on the two sides of the debate?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I guess, you know, if I look back and I think how could we have done something better, I guess when Andrew and I started Future Bayswater and started recruiting, for want of a better word, we were really frustrated and we were a little angry, and we were probably therefore pretty assertive at the beginning. And I reckon, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have been assertive. Because of course, you know, also social media is a fairly robust place, as you know, and some of the conversations that I guess I was personally involved in, and I know others were involved in, I look back on them now and think, yeah, that at best that was probably counterproductive, because, you know, I guess what Future Bayswater is trying to push to is the middle, you know. There are people who think like Future Bayswater, there are people who don't, and then there are a vast majority of people who are like me before I ran for council, who probably just expect things to happen and don't have any interest in it. And if you've got a social media conversation going on where, you know, it's robust, let's be kind and say it's robust or worse, it drives those people away, and that's something that we learnt pretty early on and have tried to not engage in since. I mean, there's a difference between disagreeing and then getting personal, and you know, I've been called immoral and all sorts of things because I have a different point of view to others, and that's fine, that's okay. I am immoral, but not because of that. But you know, I think that's one thing that it's got to be civil. It's got to be civil because you're pitching to civil society. That's what you're doing. The other thing is you've got to be evidence-based. You know, this is an emotional topic, no doubt about it, but the conversation before I think Future Bayswater got involved was, to me, it was all about emotion. And it was all about personal interest, not the community interest, to be blunt. And that does lead to perverse outcomes, I think, you know, and I think, so it's really about what is the state direction, what are the facts about where Perth is going, how can we tackle this in ways that brings prosperity to all, makes people happy, makes people want to live here. And there's plenty of examples around the world of where that happens. There's a lot of evidence about that, and I think we decided really early on, but probably not early enough, that that's where we needed to be. We needed to be in that area. And, you know, not get rid of the emotion. This, as I say, this is where people live. We're all really passionate about it. There's, you know, every group that's here tonight locally is passionate about where they live. But that's not what it's about. It's also about how are we going to leave this place better off? What is the evidence and facts about how we can do that? and finding an entertaining way of doing that people want to be involved in. So I guess, that's a lesson that I learned pretty early and we learned pretty early, and that's, I think, what you have to do if you're going to try and drive this in a way that gets the outcomes that you want.
And Kareena, your takeaways? You've watched a bit of stuff on with Pitch Bayswater?
Is that a different question?
No,
To the
same
previous
question. Same question.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for us with Future South Perth because we're fairly new into the community activation or activism scene, whereas some of the other community groups in South Perth have been around for a fairly long time and are well established and have well established positions on various things. But for me, one of the really interesting point in time was the City of South Perth ran local plannings. They're reviewing their local planning strategy, preparing a new one, and they ran a series of community workshops earlier this year. And I went along to one of them and got put on a table with a fairly vocal and active local community member. And the question came about, we had a sheet on our table and it had sort of all the different entertainment and lifestyle options down one side, cafes, restaurants, cinemas, bars, all the rest of it. And then it had all our sort of village centres across the top, being Main Street, Angelo Street, Leigh Street, Waterford, blah, blah. And the facilitator at the time said to us, as a group, discuss what you want to see happen in each of these villages in terms of cafes, restaurants, cinemas, all the rest of it. And, do you want to see more? Do you want to see less? And our table started to talk about it, and I got the impression that no one wanted anything to change. It all had to stay the same. We didn't want anything new. We didn't want anything different. We had plenty of restaurants and plenty of cafes, and why do we need more? And my opinion was quite different. I wanted to see more. And so we couldn't really reach a consensus. And I sort of said to the group, well, we can't reach a consensus, so how about we just start individually ticking in the boxes if we want to see more of this stuff and which villages we want them in. And interestingly, there was consensus in the group because everyone pretty much ticked the same boxes. But yet what they were saying came across so completely different to what I was hearing, and I found that to be a really interesting insight between what we hear and what people actually mean when they have to put pen to paper. And the second one for me was we, much like Paul and Future Bayswater, for us it's about trying to have a respectful and constructive conversation with the community. And so I put a post up on Future South Perth the other week and said, we're really interested in getting a better understanding of what the community's aspirations are and what great development and great public spaces and great activation that you've seen, whether it's down the street or over east or around the world. Share them with us. Share it. Give us your photos, post them on here. And it was dead silent, which it generally is. And so I put a picture up of a piece of street art from Fremantle, and I said to our audience, what do you think about this piece of street art? It's down in Fremantle. I think it adds a huge amount to the public realm and our sense of place, and it evokes imagination for everyone from kids to the elderly. Do you want to see more of that in our villages and neighbourhoods? And the response was overwhelmingly yes. We had people commenting, that Amok Island pelican down at Canning Bridge, that's amazing, I'd love to see that in South Perth. And the response was so overwhelming that we, last night or yesterday, we received an email from the City of South Perth saying, hey, we've seen that everyone really loves this street art, public art idea, and we've got some community grants, we've got money available, so you guys throw an application in and you can go engage an artist and put some public art somewhere. So for me that was a really amazing validation, much like Paul's Planning Champion Award of, maybe we are on the right track and we are starting to tap into the imagination and aspirations of our community, and whilst we're still a small group and fairly limited in what we can do, we can still find consensus.
Can I just add to that? I think, and that's fantastic. I'd really like to know how you got those grants. We haven't cracked, James, but anyway, although Bendigo Bank. Just want to give them a plug, yes, they're just across the road in case any of them are here tonight. You know, I think the conversation's really important, you know, and I think a lot of what Future Bayswater have ended up doing is just providing opportunities for that conversation. Tonight's, you know, in conjunction with you guys, is an example of that. You know, in 2016 we had a speaker series and there were people in this room who actually presented at that. Thank you very much. And I guess that was, it sounds patronising, it was a bit of a, we're trying to educate people, it's not the right word because it comes across as patronising, but we were trying to put out there what are the benefits of the vision that we're trying to push. And at those events, a lot of people here came to them. The conversations were fantastic, and not everyone agreed, but it was civil, and some great ideas came out of that. And I know as Future Bayswater, we learned a lot from that. 2017 and this year, we've actually been going out to the community and saying, what do you want this place to be like? And you know, what we're continually getting back is, you know, we want people here. Because people bring so much. They bring economic prosperity, they bring, you know, businesses, jobs, safety, vibrancy, all those things. You know, we would like to see a town square built. That's come out, that where people can meet, those people can actually go. And so, you know, basically, those sorts of things come out from the workshops that we've held in 2017, 2018. So, giving people, when you give people an opportunity to actually speak their mind, not on a Facebook page, but, you know, face to face, those opportunities yield so much from the community, and that's been a wonderful part of what we've done, and we'll continue to do it. So I agree with you, you know, like the context of where those conversations take place is really, really important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that both of you said was that opportunity to come together and have a conversation. In most of my work, I find that the very start-up bit of it really challenging. But as soon as we give people time and space to have a conversation, there's a lot of alignment. There's still differences between. But if you can find some common ground in some places and then work on the other stuff in a really kind of respectful way, it makes a huge difference. It's a really enjoyable thing to watch when people start handing out phone numbers to each other and saying, can we catch up for coffee later? Do you see a time when you exit the discussion? Does Future Bayswater have an end game?
Well, we all have an end game and an end date, and the way it's going, I think that's going to be when I exit it. But you know, I think that's a really good question, and I guess what I would just go back to is I'll be ready to exit this discussion. I mean, I don't really want to. I will say this: being a Future Bayswater is an enormous amount of fun. You know, you have a lot of really good nights. The mornings aren't so great, but you know, and I've met the most amazing people in my own neighbourhood that I just didn't know 2.5 years ago. Really good friends of mine, and I've learned so much from them. So much. I would hate to think that would ever end. But I know what you're saying. Like, you know, are we going to get what we want? So what do Future Bayswater want? I mean, it's for us. It's actually not about buildings. It's not. I mean, well, again, one of the issues for us when we started is we really started because of a building that's going to be built here. Once you start talking about buildings, I think you've got it kind of back to front. You know, and we try not to do that. We try not to talk about how tall buildings should be here. That's not the question for us. You know, it's almost like you're providing solutions to a problem that nobody knows anything about. And what we've learned is you really have to go back to what do you want this place to be like in 20, 30, 40 years' time. And you know, I was really lucky to be part of a process with the City of Bayswater, the Building Bayswater Report, which was run by a terrific firm, and a terrific facilitator. But there was a lot of that, and I took a lot out of that. That, you know, basically you've got to talk about what you want the place to be like. It's not about buildings; it's about prosperity. You know, we want to be able to spend and play locally. That's what we want. We want jobs here. You know, the economic performance around here is not great. It's not, and it's getting worse. It's becoming increasingly moribund. That's for you, James. I know you love that word. You know, what are we going to do about that? Is that acceptable? You know, why can't the businesses here have people living on top of them to actually get wallets past the window? And why can't we be prosperous? Yeah? You know, what about our old and our young? You know, what about my kids? Where are they going to live? You know, at the moment, there are no affordable options for our young people, very few, very few. And our aged, you know, I'm getting close to that, and I'd like to downsize one day and still live in Bayswater. And you know, I hate to say it, some of the planning decisions that are made in this area are really saying to those two groups, go live somewhere else. That's really what it's saying, because there are no options for them. You know, we want those options, no matter what they look like. You know, we want to save our tree canopy. We don't want cars, you know, rat running up all our streets. You know, we want this to be a place that people want to stop and get out and hang around in. That's where we start. When we get that, I'll get out. Yeah, I think future Bayswater will have achieved what it wants to achieve. Urban design is a really powerful tool to achieve that. But it's not about buildings for us. So, you know, I guess, you know, how do you put a measure on when a place is prosperous? I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question. But that's what we're looking for, and if we were to ever achieve it, I guess maybe then we'd start popping champagne bottles. But yeah, really tough question to answer.
You might not be the only person that wishes you could bottle the answer to what makes a good place perfect. It's been discussed quite a bit. And I know you said it's not about the buildings.
No, yeah.
But the conversation is a lot about the buildings.
It is a bit.
And this is an urban design forum, after all.
Okay.
And we talk a lot about buildings.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, I've pulled it into the trenches to talk about engagement because that's where I'm passionate. But I'm going to go to you, Kareena. You've got a precinct that's got some pretty enormously tall buildings in Perth standards at the moment. How does the conversation contribute to better design? How do you contribute and improve that to, I guess, give people an example that it actually can be good? Because we've got some pretty bad examples.
Another big question. Just for your own context, I'm a town planner, but I work in freight logistics. Not in infill development, not in apartment towers. We work on freight railway lines and ports and intermodal terminals. And so I give full credit, you know, to the urban designers and the architects and the people that have to have these really interesting debates with the community about facades and overshadowing and various other things. And South Perth is absolutely a hot topic in regards to the height of buildings. I think it's probably fair to say we, for now, have tried to leave the topic of height alone. I don't feel like we have a really good handle on what's driving community concerns about height, and we know a lot of it is about big apartment buildings resulting in the clearing of vegetation at the human scale level. And if you look at our Facebook page, we're just as much about green canopy and green open space as other local community groups in South Perth. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but we have left height alone, and like Paul was saying before, we're trying to raise the debate and the discussion to higher level aspirational, trying to understand what the community wants aspirationally, and possibly more about the public realm and how built form contributes or detracts to that, and what's the public realm that we want. But we also, very much like Paul, want diverse housing and affordable housing for every generation, be it our young or our elderly. We want to have a very inclusive and welcoming community, and to do that we feel like we need to have the diversity of housing options. We're so, particularly myself living on Mill Point Road, I feel really blessed about the amazing access that I have to the city and to public transport and to various other things, and it'd be lovely to share that with more parts of our community and for everyone to take advantage of that. It is an urban design forum debate or event, but I'm just I just don't feel that we understand our community well enough at the moment to really make some strong comments and positions on that.
Just in case I offended every planner and urban designer in the room, I'm not saying... Look, I guess what I was saying is first and foremost for future Bayswater, it's about that larger vision of what you want the place to be like. But there's absolutely no doubt that urban design plays a crucial role in that, and there will be a debate about that. I mean, we always talk about quality design. There are plenty of bad examples around from the past, and that's played into this debate. There's no doubt about that. So we want quality design. We see, I actually see planners as pretty amazing people. I knew nothing about planning 2.5 years ago. I know a lot now because I've sat at the feet of some very knowledgeable people who've shown me the power of good planning and urban design. There's no doubt about that. And you know, I think you guys actually are going to help us solve the problems and address the issues that Perth faces and Bayswater faces. That's what you're going to do. You are, okay, whether you like it or not. I hope you sleep well tonight. You know, that's how I see it. I actually do see it as, you know, you've got directions you have to follow, you know what the problem is, and you're coming up with solutions for that. And that's incredibly important. Guess what I'm saying is that if that's where you start, if you start with a discussion about buildings, you can very quickly go down a rabbit hole that you're never ever going to get out of. And really, you know, to me, the height of buildings, you know, the density, the arcos, it's all about what you want to achieve in a community. I guess that's where I'm coming from. We spend a lot of time talking about design and what sorts of, what we want the urban design in this area to be. But that's not our starting point. That's, I think, what I was trying to say.
Clear that up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I guess I'm going to summarise this little moderator part of it. I feel like there's some really, really solid thought processes coming together around making sure people are involved. It's tough though, really, really tough. And urban designers don't have the solution to the problem either all the time. Every place is a little bit different, every community is a little bit different. The cultures in different communities make it a little bit different. So it's bloody difficult to get it right. So we're probably going to struggle a little to get it right. Apologise in advance. But I think we have to keep trying, and I think we have to keep putting different things on the table and give it a go. I think we have to do it with our communities. We have to have really good conversations. And nothing proves that community members can start to understand the complicated decision making that planners make more than someone like you getting an award. And I think that's a really important thing. Community members can make really intelligent decisions when they're given really good information and have conversations about it. I think we need to do more of that. I'm opening the floor for 10 minutes of questions before we have another glass of wine and enjoy each of the other's company. Anybody else? One at the back. Thanks. There's someone at the back.
Yeah. Is there someone at the back for this?
No, you go first and then I'll get to that. Your name?
My name's Daniel. I'm a planner, well, like most of one. The question I had was about consensus and about governance. The first kind of start of this this conversation, I'm not going to call it debate, conversation, was talking about how do you get your respective local governments to listen. In one case, we've got some recognition with grants. In one case, the description is...
We're actually in the middle of an application, so if we could just tone that down a bit.
Never mind. Local governments are great. No. The question was, how does this local government member or these groups of local government councils, how do they make a decision that is for people if you can't get consensus, and must you get consensus, and what does consensus look like, and is it temporal? Very wordy.
Very wordy.
Very wordy. Yeah.
Who were you directing that to?
Any of
Any.
I'm going to say it's very hard to get consensus. I like the idea. Sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great, wouldn't it? The only comment I would make is sometimes it's not a popularity contest, this stuff, is it? It's not. It's because if it was, we'd be making decisions as leaders in the community based on the now, and whoever rolls up and talks the loudest. And to me, we've got to be careful about this word consensus, because sometimes it's about what's doing right. And Metronet is calling for urban regeneration around train stations like this. And what that inevitably means, if state government gets its way, is we're going to have more height here, there's going to be more people here, some buildings are going to get knocked down, that's going to happen. Now, not everyone's going to like that. I know people here tonight who are going to hate that. That's really not good. But these decisions aren't made for us. By the time future Bayswater gets what it wants, I'll probably be dead. We're talking decades down the track. So we've got to be careful about this word consensus, because to me it almost sounds like a popularity contest, and it's not. It's about, okay, what does this city need, and what does a place like Bayswater need to house our future population in a way that is going to be prosperous for everyone. That's what it's about to me. So, I don't expect every decision a local government to makes is going to make me happy. It certainly hasn't. But I'd like to think that it's made with the future in mind. I think we've got to be careful about that.
One of the things I would say about the whole idea of consensus, consensus in most situations assumes that this is a yes-no question. And you've only got two choices. My experience is if you give people all of the information and you ask them to rank or give a criteria or assess all of the pluses and the minuses in one hit, you will generally get an agreement amongst people about what the solution is, but not necessarily agreement on all the elements of it. So people are pretty good at, trading things off, is what we call it. Like you make trade-offs, not just one thing against another, which assumes that the question is binary. It never is, especially not in this space.
And who was standing up there?
Thanks very much. I'd just like to make a point as a bit of an observer from Swanbourne, Cottesloe area. My experience in the trans-oriented development we've been pushing and playing around with for a long time now is that visions don't just come out of community consultation. Community consultation is a reactionary thing to leadership. The vision has to be presented, and usually the vision has to be in the form of some sort of solution. That doesn't happen by community consultation. You get reactions to it, you get people to contribute to it, and you'll find that, from my experience, that there's the progressive end of the spectrum of society, and there's the regressive or people who don't want anything to happen at the other end, and together they only represent about 30% of the population. In the middle there's 70% normal people who react to change either early or a little bit late. But they're normal people and you can bring them along to the journey. And I think this is the beauty of our future Bayswater. The organisation's got huge potential in giving this normalcy to whatever is put forward. But it's important to put through ideas that are solutions rather than spinning the wheel on problems. And I'd just like to maybe pose that to Paul and the expert panel tonight.
I agree, Gary. I mean, I actually think that most people, given a chance to engage with planning issues, they do get it. They get it. And, some of this stuff, we're not going to have a referendum on whether Perth's going to tip over 4 million people. We're not. That's going to happen. I mean, our best statistics tell us that. So, you know, that's set, and the state government is responsible, and the federal government and local governments are responsible for making that work and making that as prosperous as possible for Perth. And so I agree with you. I mean, leadership is about sometimes saying, this is the way we're going, but then it's about getting people to follow. And I guess that's what Future Bayswater has been trying to do, you know, socialise that message. Because they're hard messages, you know, they're around change. Perth's going to be pretty different, I would imagine. It can't keep going the way it's going for a whole lot of reasons. So they're hard messages, and I guess what Future Bayswater and Future South Perth are trying to do is socialise that message in their own community and say, there are benefits if we address this the right way. So I agree, it's a good point.
The only thing I'd add is it's my utopian world that we talk to people well in advance of sticking a precinct plan in front of them. My utopian view of the world is we talk to them all the time, whenever they would like to talk to us. And by the time we have a precinct that we want to plan, they're already talking to us. They actually want to have a conversation with us because they know we're wanting to have a conversation with them. That's utopia, not the TV show, but sometimes.
Just from a Future South Perth perspective, I think our biggest challenge is that our biggest age group demographic in the city of South Perth is the 20 to 35 age group. And they're the group that we're planning for, plus the ones below them, and they're the ones that we find the hardest to get engaged in the conversation. And I think, you know, maybe when our time to step out of the conversation is when that group is engaged and they're talking about planning for their own future as well.
Hello. Hello? Yes. Hi. My name is Leisha Jack. I'm actually from Kareena. I run a website called Defending Public Spaces WA, and some of you may have heard of it. Before I ask my question, I'd just like to know how many people here are actually Bayswater residents? Literally live in Bayswater, right? Okay. The other question I'd like to know, because my interest in this event is I'm actually doing a bit of research into the public relation tactics being employed by the development industry, and I'd like to know who actually funds the act directly and indirectly. If you could please explain to me, Future Bayswater, who funds Curtin University's Sustainability Policy Institute and the UDFWA. Is there anyone from the high-rise development industry, any companies or developers or finance banks that finance housing and that sort of thing? Just wondering if you...
Very happy to answer that. Yeah.
Very hard.
No, very happy.
Oh, happy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I'll be upfront and say we've received $5,000 from Bendigo Bank, and that's it.
No, the Curtin University as well.
Yeah, well, Curtin University can speak for themselves. All we're doing is providing them a venue. We'll add, Yoke have provided us the building next door, rent-free, but we pay all the utilities on that.
Who funds that?
Who funds that?
Where's the money coming from?
It's coming from volunteers. It's coming from our own pockets. Yep.
And beer sales.
But
Yeah.
James, you told me you're paid by Curtin. You told me yourself that Ed Newman pays you. You told me on the phone. I'm sorry, you did.
Can I just say, sorry, as a representative of Curtin
He told me himself.
could I just say, as a
Okay,
representative,
you've got your
But
answer.
that's what he told me.
could I just
Sorry.
say, as a representative of Curtin, that no decisions or teaching that we're involved in is affected by any extraneous funding of Curtin. Absolutely not at all. We teach from the point of view of research, investigation, comparison with good practice. No funding that we receive influences that. Sorry.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
What's the point of your question? What are you trying to say? Let's put it out on the table.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that to me this appears to be development industry propaganda.
Okay.
The whole thing.
Okay.
That's how I see it. I'm sorry, I studied marketing in public relations at university. And that is my area of interest, and that's what I see.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks for that.
That's just what I see, and I think
Thanks for the
you can
feedback.
certainly clarify.
Well,
All right, I think we can
Yeah.
move on. Sorry. Yeah, sure, Ray.
Hello, I'm Shore from Perth University, Venus Tiwari student. 8 years I'm researching why community opposed to density. And I want to ask from you, Kareena, you are coming from a high socio-economic suburb, and they have power, they have wealth to oppose any development. And we have to talk about height, because this is the last point when the community erupts. They obviously very keen to have good public spaces, beautiful and lovely public spaces. Nobody disagrees with that. But when the density kind of concept comes to the table, this is when the community erupts, and issues like traffic, overshadowing, different people and everything mix up. Some of them are masks for much more deeper fears that they have, which nobody can guarantee that it's going to be good or bad. We are going to have a European style dense environment or southeastern kind of dense environment. So this is the issue, I think, these future Bayswater or future Southside, especially you, because you have the other side, as you said, usually retired wealthy people who are opposing you. And anyway, we have to talk to them. Just ignoring them, just saying you have 5 people, you have 10 people, it doesn't resolve any issue. At the end, it may kind of, comes to a kind of, I want to say that, racism on the ground. And affordable housing, they don't see as our kids are going to live. So I want to have, did you have any conversation with those people? Thank you. On the opposite side.
I personally haven't had a conversation with any of those people. And it's probably, without making excuses, I run a small business and I'm incredibly time poor. And so it's about doing what I have the time to do when I have the time to do it, which is generally after 10 o'clock at night. And I don't think most people want to get a phone call from me after 10 o'clock at night.
No, your Facebook or whenever you put a post, do you have any kind of opposition view to say anything to you?
It's probably, the height is probably something that our group is still trying to grapple with. For us, we want to retain tree canopy at the ground level, and to do that, we understand that we should reduce the building bulk and the plot ratio at ground, and the footprint of the building at ground level. We can retain more trees, but it means the buildings probably need to go higher, which is in conflict with what other parts of our community want. So I think, to be fair, until we really wrap our heads around it, we're tending to leave the topic alone because we don't want to aggravate the issue. But I think from my own experience, I lived in the city of Melville when the Raffles redevelopment was going through, and if you lived in the city of Melville at that time, you'll know that for most of the community it was going to be the end of the world. The Raffles redevelopment at 8 stories was going to be the end of the world as we knew it. And it went to the State Administrative Tribunal and it was approved ultimately, and it got built, and from the minute that it was built, no one said anything about it. And now there's buildings going up that are much higher than 8 stories around the Canning Bridge precinct. And I admittedly don't live in the city of Melville anymore, so I don't feel like I'm in touch with that community and their sentiment about it. But when I was in the city of Melville after the Raffles building was built, the community went dead silent, and maybe it was partly because they went, oh, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be, it's okay, and now maybe that part of the city is more of a landmark and it's an entrance to the city of Melville. I'm not going to try and guess what changed people's minds or whether they were still the same, but they just decided that their voice wasn't being heard and they gave up. I'm not sure, but height is definitely a challenge in the city of South Perth, and there is a very active community who have a lot more time on their hands. I can't comment on how much more money they have than us, but you know, they're obviously incredibly passionate, and so I guess that's why we've been really reluctant to get into that debate or not wanting to have a debate with them, but we do want to talk to them. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think we have time for one more question. Greg?
This guy up here, put his hand up a
Okay.
second.
I hadn't seen that in my
He's got his invisibility cloak on.
G'day. Hello. My first son was born in Bayswater in Rose Avenue in 1984. My last child was conceived in Rose Avenue, Bayswater in 2004. I've had an interest in the town centre for a long time. My interest is in livability, or to use the Ebenezer Howard phrase of 1898, as a place to live, work and play. And like Paul, I got involved in the town because of the building proposed for this site. The building that I would say is of zero quality design, the old one was approved and the new one. And what I want to know from Paul is, does heritage have any role to play in his notion of the future? And is the reason that the local government has a tin ear to future Bayswater, is it because they recognise future Bayswater as being astroturfers, i.e. fake grassroots?
Now I know what that means.
Thank you for defining astroturfers, because I didn't know what that meant. Now I know what it means. That's very good. Also, thanks for confirming that council has a tin ear to us. I wasn't really aware of that, but there you go.
You said that earlier on, Paul.
Okay. Some do, some don't. But a tin ear is a bit rough. I think they listen to us. They just don't always agree with us. That's fine. You asked me about heritage. Yeah, and what I think authentic heritage must be retained. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think if buildings are old and they're not, classified or categorised as high heritage value by experts. See, I don't categorise the buildings for their heritage value, and neither do you, Greg. Experts do that. And when they tell me that certain buildings have a certain value, that doesn't save them from demolition. For me, I wonder, well, what value is there to the community in keeping them? Now, I know you're speaking about these two buildings in particular.
I'm talking about the 9 involved in SCAR 12.
Yep.
And I would classify myself as an expert in heritage.
Okay.
And I didn't say in the beginning that I am a town planner as well.
Yeah, you are, and I've heard you say that many times. I'm just giving you an answer. You might not like it, but what I would say is, if buildings have a low heritage value and they've been unoccupied, like 9 King William Street, let's look at that as an example. It has a very low heritage value. For nearly the whole time I've lived in this area, nearly 3 decades, it's been empty. The only reason it's revitalised now is because we've taken it over and given it a new life.
The owners didn't want to rent it.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not.
It's true.
Okay, well, okay, but it's been empty. It's been empty. My question is this: what value does that building actually offer our community, laying empty? Why should that building be condemned to being empty and getting more and more decrepit over time? Why would that be the case? I mean, there's been plenty of opportunities for a lot of people to do what we've done and actually go in there and give it a new life. No one else has done it. We've done it. We're really proud of that. But we're also aware of the fact that it has a very low heritage value, as assessed by people who know about heritage, who are passionate about heritage, who realise if they play games with these categorisations, other really valuable buildings will be at risk. So to us, you know, an empty building does nothing for this community. Why not give it a new life? Why not give this space a new life? Why not bring people in? Okay? Why not allow a building to be built here that's going to do something for this community rather than give people, you know, a nostalgia fix as they walk past? That's how I feel about it. But if we have buildings which are of a very high heritage value, they must be retained. Okay? And that needs to be determined by people who know things about heritage.
All right. I'm going to say thank you to my co-panelists. I'm going to hand back to Mel to do the very formal thank you, but huge appreciation for your time. Huge appreciation for your time. I do really like talking to community members, so thanks for being out tonight. I'll pretend it's my theme.
I want to thank everybody who came from the Urban Design Forum perspective, because this is the kind of things that we really like to see, and I'm so glad we decided to come out to the community with one of our fora, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Yeah.